Welcome to the Dialed In Podcast. I'm your host, the official CRG, and today we are going to continue our three-part series on psychedelics. In this episode, we'll cover 5 forms of psychedelics from how they are made to the positive and negative effects each form has on us. For starters, the first psychedelic we'll talk about are magic mushrooms. Magic mushrooms, or shrooms, are a type of mushroom that contain the psilocybin drug. Magic mushrooms are natural and grow all around the world, but they can mainly be found in almost any climate. However, they tend to grow around dead tree stumps or decaying wood. Magic mushrooms can be identified by their distinctive appearance. They typically have a funnel-shaped cap and stem that is either smooth or has tiny bumps. Magic mushrooms are usually brown or reddish in color, but can also be white, yellow, or purple. It's important to note that there's thousands of different types of mushrooms, so it's very important to identify and test each mushroom before you go ahead and ingest, because the last thing I want is anybody getting poisoned. Magic mushrooms hold a compound which can lead to changes in the mood, perception, and consciousness. Some positive effects of magic mushrooms are that there are current studies today that show benefits in patients with anxiety, depression, addiction, and PTSD. But just like anything, there's going to be some negative effects. Some individuals who use magic mushrooms may experience a heightened level of fear, confusion, psychosis, and even syndromes that resemble schizophrenia. The biggest risk of all, like I said, is poison. So make sure you are testing your mushrooms. Make sure you have a controlled substance. Make sure you know what you're putting into your body, because there's thousands of different types of mushrooms, and some of them have that psychedelic effect, some of them don't. And the next form of psychedelic we'll talk about is mad honey. For people that don't know, mad honey is a psychedelic honey that is made by bees throughout Nepal to the Pacific Northwest region. Mad honey is made by bees that feed on certain flowers. These plants grow in temperate, mountainous areas all around the world, and that certain plant contains chemicals called granulotoxins that produce the psychedelic effect. So mad honey has been around for thousands of years, used by tribes and cultures to reflect or for a spiritual awakening. Now, although mad honey might sound interesting, to actually obtain the mad honey, workers have to basically risk their life. Now, when I mean by workers have to risk their life, mad honey is found in beehives, and those beehives can literally be from anywhere from 40 to 60 feet up in the air, and they normally hang on the edge of mountain cliffs. So in order for workers to extract the honey, they have to rappel on these cliffs, and there's a lot of these places that don't have that much money. They are building their own ladders. They have it all out of wood, and they go up super high in the air, and they have to knock down these hives, trying to extract the honey without getting stung by these massive bees and without falling. So it is a very risky process, but to them and to a lot of people, it is worth the reward. Some positive effects of mad honey is that it's been commonly used to treat gastrointestinal disorders or hypertension for long periods of time. But like I said before, just like anything, there is some negative effects. Mad honey can have a certain experience where people, go into a really bad trip, or they might feel nauseated or dizzy. Some people get headaches, and sometimes people just have an overall general weakness. They feel kind of stuck, or they just feel like they can't move their arms. So now, even though mad honey has been around for a super long time, this third form that we're going to talk about is actually one of the most interesting ones, I think, and one of the ones that have probably been around the longest, and that is ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is a psychedelic tea that originated from the upper Amazon area in South America. It is typically prepared from 2 plants. It's the Psychotra viridis, which contains the psychedelic compound DMT, and it also is mixed with the ayahuasca vine itself, which contains monoamidine oxidase inhibitors that prevent DMT from being broken down in the gut and liver. So this combination allows DMT to have psychoactive effects when taken orally and prolongs the intense psychedelic experience. Ayahuasca has a very long history of ceremonial consumption among various indigenous populations throughout countries such as Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru. Ayahuasca is known to be used to help convert individuals to shamanism and is still used today for spiritual resets. Some positive effects of ayahuasca are positive changes in the brain, allowing for relations between past and current struggles to be amplified, allowing you to envision and strategize your current situations. Some negative effects from ayahuasca are a slight agitation. There can be vomiting, and just like any psychedelic, there can be bad hallucinations, which we call as a bad trip. So now that we've talked about magic mushrooms, ayahuasca, and mad honey, we are going to talk about DMT. DMT itself, or dimethyltryptamine, is a hallucinogen that naturally occurs in many plant species and can be made in a lab. DMT can affect people in many different ways. Some describe it as they are traveling at warp speed through a bright tunnel of lights and shapes, but some people may find it overwhelming or frightening. DMT works by binding itself to a range of receptors in the brain, notably the 5-HT2A serotonin receptor. So some positive effects of DMT are a feeling of euphoria, altered sense of time, and depersonalization. So feeling yourself and loving yourself. But just like anything, there are some negative effects of DMT, and that can be rapid heart rate, increased blood pressure, paranoia, vomiting, and even diarrhea. So the last form we'll talk about today is LSD. LSD is a synthetic chemical made from a substance found in ergot. Ergot is a fungus that infects rye. So LSD interacts with the proteins on the surface of the brain, which are your serotonin receptors, just like the DMT. So in its pure state, LSD is a white, odorless crystal substance. However, LSD is so potent that an effective dose is virtually invisible. LSD can affect everybody differently, and it is probably one of the strongest psychedelics. It can base completely on one's weight, size, overall health, mental health, health conditions. Everything comes to play when you're taking LSD. So no matter what drug you're taking, make sure you know it's safe and tested and that you know what drug you're doing beforehand. When using LSD, people can experience euphoria, hallucinations, altered sense of time, and there's studies that even show LSD is helping with patients that have extreme depression and anxiety and certain diseases. Some negative effects of LSD are paranoia, fatigue, headaches, and sometimes vomiting. Like I said before, it is very important to note that you need to absolutely test any drug you take. Make sure you know what you're taking. But LSD can have long-term effects on patients, having most patients experience flashbacks or even worsen one's mental health. So if you want to do a psychedelic, I wouldn't dive right into LSD because that can really fuck you up in a bad way. You know, you might think you're going to benefit for the better, and it could end up having a very long-term effect on you. So with that being said, that's going to wrap up today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a little thing or two from one of these, forms that we talked about. Remember that no matter what drug you take, just make sure you do it in a very tested, safe area. Make sure you know what you're doing. Nothing's more important than your life, not even a temporary high. Today's quote is by 365 Mentality. You can follow them on Instagram. It says, "Life chips away at us all. Some choose to play victim. Some choose to be a survivor, and then there are those who choose to conquer." My question is, which one are you? I appreciate you guys tuning in. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And with all that being said, this is the Dialed In Podcast.